Hello everyone and welcome back to the Gamers Digester channel. If you're anything like me, recently you just watched Cyberpunk Edge Runners and you found it to be incredible. And with the recent release announcement, I guess, of Phantom Library, you may be hopping back into Cyberpunk 2077. If you have an Asus ROG Ally, I encourage you to do so, but playing this game again has begged the question for me. How has this done so far for AAA games? In terms of performance, what are some things I feel like it lacks in? What are some games it has suffered with? And what am I nervous for going forward? I'd like you guys to maybe ponder that question yourself, because there definitely are some upcoming releases that I feel like might push this device pretty hard. I have currently been playing through Cyberpunk. I started fresh and have been playing through on the Asus. I'll pull up some performance here for you guys that are curious. But honestly, this has been incredible. I tried playing this on the Steam Deck and it was okay. I have one word of warning for every person if you're going to try and play this. Cyberpunk 2077 recently added a setting for the graphic settings called Steam Deck. Now, I don't know why this is, but when I set that setting on my Asus, it crashed the game and would not launch the game at all. There was a lot of things that I tried. I tried uninstalling to no avail. What I had to do was go into Cyberpunk's user data and delete my user profile, if you will. So it saves my data to the cloud, but all of the saved cached data on here, so stuff like performance information and graphic settings, because if you guys are aware, some games store the information for your graphic settings on the cloud, which can be a pain in the ass if you're trying to switch back and forth between different devices. However, some devices actually store that on the device itself, and this happens to be one of those. So I've got my settings saved for my PC, and then I can go on here and it's different. But no, this game has been incredible to look at, and there's been some people who've gotten ray tracing working on here. I may have messed with it a little bit. For me, ray tracing is just not worth the cost. And by cost, I mean just for what graphic settings already look like, I'm perfectly okay with how this is running and looking. I don't think I need ray tracing on top of that. So I know we're a little ways into the video here, but here are some games that I felt like could have done better as far as performance on the Ally. I've covered these videos in the past, but if you're new to the channel, I'll go over them briefly. So the number one game that I felt like I wasn't very happy with was probably Battlefield 2042. I have a very cheap gaming laptop that can play that game very well. I've seen way worse systems run the game pretty well, and I was pretty disappointed with how it ran on here. You guys will have to let me know your experience with that. Me personally, I was not very happy, and I ended up just uninstalling it. Didn't feel like it was worth the room it took up. And now the next one was one I was very, very excited for, but honestly, I kind of just don't care. And that's not really anything to do with the Ally, but the performance wasn't there as well, and that is Destiny. Destiny 2 has just been kind of losing touch with the fan base, I feel like, and I could go off on a whole tangent about that. But for right now, the performance really, for how old the game is, it was not where I wanted it to be. I was not happy with it at all. Now, some games, of course, that have ran beautifully and should run beautifully, Forza. I will go up and down saying how much I think that game does fantastic. It looks gorgeous on these systems, on these handhelds, lower end systems. It is optimized incredibly. Cyberpunk is kind of in that same boat. I mean, this game was on release breaking brand new systems. You needed like a 3090, and they've done a great job at optimizing. I mean, we're getting around 50 FPS on a handheld device. I find that to be incredible, and I'm very happy with that. Next up would be Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. I'm honestly not that big of a COD fan as I was growing up, but those games have been running really well on lower end systems. I think they realized that in order to reach a bigger fan base on PC, they need to be more optimized. And I'll say this, I have an appreciation for game studios that will take the time to make games run well. There are a few that I am just disgusted with, and that's kind of just how the name of the game is. If you're familiar with Star Citizen, it doesn't matter what setting, what PC you have, that thing will be like 20 FPS in some cities in certain places. And to me, that's just not acceptable. I understand the scope of the game, but the amount of money that certain game companies have received and for their games not to be optimized this far in is just gross. That's the number one game that I can think of off the top of my head. But there are others, like I mentioned earlier, that just don't run as well as I'd like them to. Now, as far as games that I'm nervous for, and I'd love to hear your guys' opinion on this, Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. Whenever I say Avatar, I always think of the show, the Nickelodeon show, but it's the blue people. That movie, the one that was the top box office for quite a while before Endgame. Wow, this roundabout just keeps... Oh, it's a roundabout. Oh my gosh, clip that. That's funny. I've just been going round and round and roundabout. I feel like that game will push these lower end devices incredibly hard. I'd be surprised if they run well. I'm hoping with some upscaling with some AMD FSR, maybe 1.0, something like that, that if that's included, it'll be much needed in order to get a decent frame rate. One thing that I've enjoyed with the Ally is the resolution. It may not seem important to a lot of people, but this 1080p panel looks fantastic at this size. You don't need any more, any less, and you'd start to notice. The Steam Deck, for as great as it was, just looked kind of blurry to me in a lot of games. And I feel like the 1080p panel at first I thought might have been overkill, but for a game like this, if you have a nice upscaling that does its job, it just works, and it looks incredible. As Todd Howard always loves to say, it just works. But, of course, the elephant in the room, Starfield. Starfield, I don't know how to feel about that game yet, just as far as the game goes. But if you guys watched the interview Todd Howard did, they asked him, will it run on the Steam Deck? And if you paid attention, there was no comment. Same with the question about black holes. There was no comment, which I thought was rather interesting, why they couldn't just give us a yes or a no. If you guys were familiar with Cyberpunk, the launch of this game, I feel like it's okay to have a smaller scope. We're not really at the point in technology where we can go and say you can do whatever you want, because man, there's a lot of things I could think of, and already there's some crazy limitations that there are on the game. So I'd rather not be pulled ahead on with a carrot on a string. You can tell me if it'll be Steam Deck verified. You can tell me these things, and I will. I mean, most of us are adults. We'll be able to cope with that fact. It'll be okay. I think it's worse for them to just kind of tease us the whole time. There's a lot of things. If you're familiar with Destiny, I'll say this: having a sparrow, or it's akin to a horse or something, some mode of getting around, like how a car is for most of these kind of GTA type games. You'd think that on a game with thousands of planets, you would have at least some way to get around, and they confirmed that there will not be. Well, I wish that they would just kind of go out and say that there are like minimum PC specs online, like will this game even be playable on the Steam Deck? That's something that I think a lot of people would like to know, and it will influence a lot of people's pre-orders, because I have some friends who will just use the Steam Deck as their main gaming thing. It's $350 and you can play Steam games. That's incredible. Whether you have to do modifications or not, I think it would be good for them and for everybody else to know if it's playable. But I don't think they'll let us know. So at least off the top of my head, those are some of those two games are probably the ones I think will be pushing the device the most. There are some Capcom games that are coming out on the horizon that I know will run really well. I will say this: the Resident Evil 2, 3, and 4 did not run as well as I thought they did. Now, I've discussed this earlier on the channel, but I feel like if you lock the frame rate to 60 on this display, it looks really bad. There's a lot, it's super choppy. It's not tearing, it's just very choppy. And I think that's because as soon as you lock it, you don't have access to FreeSync anymore. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'd love to know, but I think that's why that's happening. So when I was playing a game like Resident Evil, you're not hitting those really high frame rates, so you kind of have to lock it at 60, and it just looks horrible. It looks really bad. That game, and I'll stand by this, the Resident Evil games run best on the Steam Deck. If you want to play them on handheld and you have a Steam Deck, that is where you're going to have the most fun, because I tried them on here, all 3 of them, and I just didn't think they were all that fun anymore. Like, when I'm spending most of my time worrying about how the game looks, or kind of just being grossed out by the choppiness, the latency, stuff like that, it just kind of removes you from the immersion. And I'm sure a lot of you guys know what I'm talking about here, especially if you're trying to play a horror survival game like that, where you really need to be immersed. Just having to worry about those little things is just not fun. It's not worth it for me. I'd rather play sitting down at my PC for something like that. When I was playing my Steam Deck as my daily driver, I was playing those games at work. And now that I'm taking my Asus, I just don't think I'll take up the space with them. I know this video's gone on a little bit longer than I wanted it to. I think I'm going to try and do, until we get some more news and updates for some of these upcoming games, we're just going to do some discussions every once in a while on the channel. I feel like I have a fun time with those, and you guys do as well. As always, I just love to give you guys a place to talk, maybe vent. If you're having issues, I'd love to hear about those issues. Please, 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 if you are going to play Cyberpunk, listen and take heed to what I said earlier. You can set everything to low, that's fine. Just the second you set it to Steam Deck mode, and it's just a settings preference. If you set it to that, it will crash the game, and you won't even be able to launch it. You will not even be able to get into the game. It froze my device 3 times. So, yes, if you are going to play, I urge you to be careful. But yeah, games right now are in a very good place. We have a lot of really good AAA games. These past couple years have been bad, and I mean really bad. Some of these launches have been horrible, but as we've been seeing, just give the developers a few years and they're able to turn some dude's trash into another man's treasure. I mean, if you guys remember this game at launch, it was nothing to write home about, and I'm serious about that. Same with Battlefield. It makes me incredibly nervous for games like Starfield that have such an incredibly huge scope, and they're touting all these things. It makes me nervous that it will be another Cyberpunk 2077. I might make a video completely about that in the future once I do a little bit more research and just kind of see some of the things they're touting and saying will be included, and I'll compare them to what Cyberpunk was comparing, and we'll see if there's any similarities and if those actually get fulfilled. Because I don't think I can take another 2-year break between... I mean, Cyberpunk came out right at the tail end of 2020, so it's been about 2.5 years actually, and now this game is very fun. Still buggy, of course it's a buggy mess, but it is still a very fun game, and it took a very long time to get here. I don't think delaying it would have been any better. They needed people to play the game. It's really hard for these AAA studios to make these games and have them be good at launch, because there's just so many things that could go wrong. But I think I'll end here and make another video about that in the future. I hope all of you guys have had a fantastic Sunday and have a happy 4th of July. I know I love to go to Walmart or Macy's, and we've got a local chain here called Macy's. Just buy the cheapest little fireworks for like $50 to $100. You could light those off for 3 hours straight. And that is how I 4th of July. But I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Thank you for watching.